guess that was the first time that we sort of learned sales in in an environment that's not so structured, right?
Yeah, no structure.
No structure
at all,
right?
whatsoever. Yeah.
Here's a binder. Here's a pitch.
Yeah.
Hit some doors, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. You overnight became this international businessman, and all of us back here were like, "Have you heard about Imran? He's in Africa. He's doing business. He's traveling all over the world."
My gramps had some land, and I went out there and built a small little commercial complex, right? And
yeah, but you say that
was
so
interesting.
casually. I went out there. I built a little commercial complex.
Just traveling around, you know, having a good time, and just living life, spending money faster than it was coming in.
Which probably didn't really align with your earlier theory of
Yeah.
successful people are established.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And, I go to the banker and I'm like, hey, we're 95% done. We're ready to sign the leases. Here's all the paperwork. He looks at me and he's like, hey, young man, the board of directors, they're not going to go for it anymore.
Here today with a good friend of mine, somebody I haven't seen in a really long time, Imran Jaffer. We grew up together in the same area here in DC. We went to school together, but we actually became friends when we started doing door-to-door sales together, which was when we were about 15. I was 15, you were 16. Got started knocking doors after high school. And so he's here with us today. He's living in Africa now, and wanted to hear a little bit about his life, his journey as someone who's focused on sales, a businessman, but also a leader. So to start, just kind of wanted to chat a little bit about door-to-door sales, and some of the fun memories that we had, but maybe also how that kind of propelled you into your venture, which started immediately after graduating, right?
Yeah, so I think those memories of us, working at Home Solutions, knocking doors and asking homeowners if they wanted windows and siding. I think those were sort of the moments that have pretty much set the foundation for where we are today in terms of just, having a lot of fear in you, being able to talk to people, just getting through those initial hurdles in life. Those sort of were able to mold us and create that foundation. So now whatever we're selling, any product, whether you're approaching somebody at the bar or at the train station, it's a lot easier to just, be yourself, right?
Yeah.
And show them who Jake is or who Imran is, right? And so I guess that's really what I learned. And I guess that was the first time that we sort of learned sales in an environment that's not so structured, right?
Yeah, no structure.
No structure
at all,
right?
whatsoever. Yeah.
Here's a binder. Here's a pitch.
Yeah.
Hit some doors,
Exactly. Yeah.
And I guess over time you sort of learn how to bring in that structure. And a lot of those lessons and a lot of those people were very vital, I guess, at that age and time frame for us, and pushed us in the right direction, which, I think till today, somebody like John Mathers, who's incredible. I think if you put him on any product, he could build an interesting team, and he's driven enough to put you out there, right? And even if you don't know what you're doing, his belief in you, right? I think that's what he was able to bring to a lot of young kids our age, right? Was having that belief in you, and even if you didn't have it yourself, he would still believe in you, and I guess it gave you that motivation to go at it, and you'd break out of that shell, right?
Man, that's such a good point. John Mathers has a lot of good qualities, but I think he did have, and probably still does, tremendous faith in his employees and his team members, right?
Yeah.
And maybe even things that they didn't realize they had, he
completely
knew. John Mathers was our manager at the door-to-door sales company, and he's responsible for a lot of our success today.
Yeah.
He's also responsible for the term shebango, which is used internationally now amongst all of us. But hey, quick question for you, man. Before we move on from this, do you have a favorite memory of those days when we used to go out knocking doors?
Oh man, there's so many good memories. I remember, racing our cars back and forth from the office with you.
Yeah.
Just being bitterly cold, and we used to sit there in the neighborhood, And we used to have a competition to see who could get the first hot chocolate. Remember
Yeah. Or who could get invited in. Yeah.
We're freezing in the cold and we're knocking on people's doors and you should be like, let's see who could get the first hot chocolate.
Oh, I know. And dude, do you remember that girl, Sherry, that came to work with us? And she got invited into like every house, of course. Yeah, she was drinking hot chocolate all night long. Yeah. We were struggling, but so true.
Oh God. But yeah, really, really good times. I think, we learned a lot. In those days, right?
We did.
Door to door, all the rejection, right? Learning how to deal with all of that. I think that was a huge part of it as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now you can use a lot of those skills in today's environment, dealing with people. Again, cold calling is probably the one way to generate leads. It doesn't necessarily have to be knocking on someone's door. Today with technology, it's changed completely, but it's just about that approach and having the ability to even do that is the first step, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then everything after that, you can follow a little bit more of a structure that can lead you to generate your leads or, bring them better and focus your company on them, right?
Right. Yeah, it does help to set a framework for operating moving forward, right? Like no matter what endeavor you're pursuing. So, okay, so tell me a little bit about what happened when we graduated from high school, because you overnight became this international businessman. And all of us back here were like, have you heard about Imran? He's in Africa, he's doing business, he's traveling all over the world. What happened?
So, I guess from a outside perspective, it looks, all fine and dandy and stuff like that, but it's tough, and it's been an interesting journey, and I'm still on it, and I'm loving every moment of it. I guess I don't know if you know, but I grew up in Africa for a bit of my childhood, and I cultivated a lot of good friendships when I was younger, and that just opened up opportunity for me in the beginning. And right after we graduated, I started opening those doors of opportunity and started going after them. And not each and every single one was working out for me, but they started to evolve and things started to work out for me in a positive direction. And so with having a good network over there and having my grandparents over there, I saw some really good opportunity and I went for it and went into property development. So I made a little bit of money doing trade with my friends from Uganda, spending a lot of time in Kenya, and my gramps had some land and I went out there and built a small little commercial complex, right? And
yeah, but you say that so casually. I went out there, I built a little commercial complex. Something had to have happened before then. And I knew that you were getting involved with trading construction equipment.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So what happened was my buddies called me and they're like, hey, we're looking for some dozers. And I'm like, hey, that's awesome. I know all about dozers. I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
But I went online and did a bunch of research and, sort of became a professional overnight.
Yeah.
Traveled all over the US, went and looked at all this different equipment and I bought myself my first Android phone. I think back then is when, the first Droid had come out. Took a bunch of pictures with my digital camera, uploaded them to my phone, started sending all of these emails, and there was all this interest sparking up. We're also sitting at
in a bulldozer.
Yeah, in bulldozer. So my buddies in Uganda were like very interested in what I was sending them. We were sitting at an interesting time here in the U.S. because you're looking at 2009, 2010. We've just slumped our economy. Construction industry is at the lowest. Construction equipment is dirt cheap at this point. So we're buying equipment that's $500,000 for like 40, 50 grand, right? At liquidation sales, like at some of the auctions. And so it was kind of a no-brainer because you're buying top-of-the-line equipment, sending it to Africa at, a quarter of the price. The people that were purchasing were, very happy with the products that we had. But then the time frame for doing that trade sort of ended by around 2012. I think Obama had put in a roads bill and he started to jumpstart the economy again. And that's when the construction industry started to pick back up again.
Okay.
And so the opportunity for that had sort of dwindled. And by then, I had spent quite a bit of time in Africa, and that's where the opportunities for putting up some commercial complexes sort of came to me. And the reason I thought of that is I looked at a lot of people that were successful. And a lot of them are established. They have property, they have industries, they have, a lot of income flowing in from all of these passive sort of investments that they have, right? And so I was sitting there with a fair bit of chunk of money on my hands, and I said I need to set myself up some passive income streams. And so what better than rental income, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. So you send a bulldozer over. Still hung up on this.
Okay.
You send a bulldozer over, and then what?
Okay, so I sent a few bulldozers to Kampala, which is in Uganda, and before they even got there, I had already created a database of some more equipment. So I go out to Kenya and Uganda, and I start pitching all of these people, telling them that I sell bulldozers. And I'm a young kid, and half of them are like, get out of my office, and the other half are like intrigued. And so because we're sitting at such a great price point, I was just filling in order after order, and I was sending machine after machine. So I was in East Africa for 2 months, and I was in the US for 3 months. And I was doing that back and forth, meeting all sorts of farmers and road contractors and people in construction, everyone that needs excavators and graders and dozers. And we're filling up all these orders. In 2010, I'd been to Paris, went to South Africa for the World Cup, just traveling around, having a good time, and, just living life, spending money faster than it was coming in.
Gotcha. Which probably didn't really align with your earlier theory of successful people are established.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
At some point, I had to slow that down and get back to the goals of what I wanted and where I wanted to be. And so I think one of those things was, hey, if you have land or if you have a farm, you should always go back and farm your land, right? That's like one of the basics of growth, right? Is if your dad has a farm, you go to your farm and you till the land, right? And you grow that farm, and it's kind of like an analogy, right? So my grandfather had some opportunity and had some land, and my way of tilling the land was to develop it, right? So it's in a different sense, right? But that's sort of where my thought process was. Right?
Okay, and when you developed it, what happened? What did that look like for you?
So I'm pretty young. I'm walking around Kenya, and I'm telling people that I'm going to build a building. Half of them think I've lost it, and so I start off on this journey. It took me a little while to hire my architects and a contractor, and figure out permitting and this, that, and the other. So,
and how are you finding these people?
Just talking to people, and I think that's coming back to doing door to door. It's just getting into people who have already done it, and asking them, hey, how did you build that building? Which architect did you use? Which company did you use to get your permitting from, right? Now you go to 5 people who are already successful, who have already done developments. They're going to give you 5 different answers, but interestingly enough, along those answers, you're going to find a lot of answers that are intertwined, right? And so the messaging is going to all be intertwined, and everyone that's going to tell you these things sort of has the same message in between. And then you have to be smart enough to take these 5 people's advice and then utilize maybe 70 or 80% of it, and then put 20% of it, which is your own sort of spice and spunk, because you don't want to reinvent the wheel.
Sure.
Right? Some things are just done in a certain manner, and you kind of have to follow that directional flow, and then you could add your flair, right, to make it yours. But usually, if you want to get from point A to point B, it's probably been done before, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel, but you can just speak to the people who have done that specific thing, whether it's making a bicycle or building a building, right? Everything is, a lot of things have already been invented, unless you are an inventor and making brand new things. Unfortunately, I'm not, but I'm doing stuff that's already been done, right? People have built houses before, they've built buildings. I'm not the first person to do it, right? So just figuring out the ducks and the process, getting all the ducks in the row, and going after it. So coming back to my story, I had surrounded myself with some good people, and they were able to push me in the right direction. So I start building my building, and I get back to sales. So I go to Nairobi and I visit all these banks, and this one banker is like, hey, we're gonna take your building. So I'm like, perfect. So I get the confidence to continue building. 9 months down the road, I've almost completed my building. I'm almost out of cash. I have like $1,000 in my account, and I'm 95% complete with my building. And I fly to Nairobi, and I go to the banker, and I'm like, hey, we're 95% done. We're ready to sign the leases. Here's all the paperwork. He looks at me and he's like, hey, young man, the board of directors, they're not gonna go for it anymore. I'm already broke at this point, or virtually close to being broke, right?
So the $10 didn't matter.
So the
at that
$10,
point.
I was like, screw it. Like, things just kind of work out, right? If you follow what you love, if you go after, your dreams and goals, sometimes it may not work out the way it's supposed to, but if you keep on going at it, and you don't back down. I could have easily at that point sat there and said, oh crap, I built this building, they said no, let's sulk and cry about it. Or I took the other approach where it's like, all right, buckle down, get back to the basics, and do what you do best, right? And at that point it was knocking on doors.